chatted up today. A wonderful lady, Carolyn Rock, and her phone number much, and my Facebook page. Hopefully you had a fantastic week.
Tired tile, there is no excuse. So let's go to the home.
Here it is. This is our transom. The sides are cut at 10 degrees. The bottom is cut at 12 degrees. And from this point across the top to the other point, it's cut at 90, or just 90 to the top here. This is a flat cut, 10 degrees, and these bevel away from the pattern. So I drew the pattern on this side. I also drew a vertical horizontal line right here on the back side, and I drew the pattern on the back side of the plywood as well. And I did that to demonstrate how much the transom grows when you cut these angles on it. So, all of the angles are cut from the same side away from your line. So this is the line we drew. The angle actually goes, let me get a little better. The angle actually points like this, away from the line. Bottom of the transom, the angle points towards us, away from the line. Let me get over here, like that. This side of the transom, again, it points away from the line. So let's get a little better. Sorry about my camera work here. So the transom points, the cut is like that. So this side of the transom is per the plans. It's exactly the same size as the plans. However, because these are cut on angle, away and away, the back side of the transom is going to be wider and taller than the pattern because of the angles. So I made some blocks, 10-degree block for the sides of the transom, 12-degree block for the bottom of the transom. And this is what I used to set my jigsaw with. I cut this transom out with my jigsaw. I set the jigsaw for 10 degrees. And my blade was leaning towards the right, which means on the right side of the transom, I had to cut from the bottom to the top to get that bevel away from the line. On the left side, I had to flip the saw around. I drilled a hole out here, and I cut from the top to the bottom. If you were to cut from the bottom to the top, your bevel would have been the opposite direction. So without swapping the blade on my jigsaw, I just cut the left side from the top to the bottom to get the bevel the same direction. On the bottom, 12 degrees, same thing. I took my block, I made this little 12-degree block. I set my jigsaw with the blade leaning left this time, and I started on the right side. So my blade's leaning like this. I clamped a spare piece of 1x4 here with the correct spacing to use as a fence. So believe it or not, the bottom of the transom is cut with a jigsaw. And because I used a fence, it turned out really nice. Anyhow, so I clamped my fence on here, blade leaning left. I cut the bottom of the transom all the way off. Then I reset my fence this direction, clamped it on again, out to this end, clamped it on here with the correct width, and I continued with my blade leaning left, cutting this side of the transom. If you were going to cut one side and then come over and cut the other side, again, you would have to flop your blade because instead of cutting right to left, the blade's leaning left. Cutting left to right, you would have to lean your blade right to keep this angle correct. So, we'll get these little blocks down here, set them over here. We'll flip the transom over. And this is where it's going to start making sense, if it doesn't already. Here is the transom. I drew out the pattern on both sides so you can see it. This will be the inside. And this is actually how much the pattern grows because you cut these on 10-degree angles. It's not quite a 1/4 inch times 2 because you did it on each side. So the transom is going to end up not quite a 1/2 inch wider than the original plans. On the bottom here, you cut it at 10-degree angle, 12-degree angle. So you can actually see how much the transom grew on this side because of that 12-degree angle. It's about a 1/4 inch, not quite. Now, if you didn't want to cut the sides of the transom at a 10-degree angle, I believe Chris Atwood, who built a beautiful zip, by the way, I believe he didn't cut the sides of the transom at a 10-degree angle. I think he just cut them 90, just a straight cut, and then faired it later to get his plywood to fit. I believe that's how Chris Atwood did it, and he built a beautiful zip. It turned out really nice. So I suppose you could, if you wanted to, cut these at 90 so that your cut would be the sides of your transom would be identical to the front of your transom, and then later ferret, you would just end up slightly narrower on the transom, according to the plans. Of course, I'm following the plans to a T here because I'm not much of a woodworker, and I just want to make sure I do it the way they say I should do it. So that demonstrates, how much the inside of the transom grew versus the outside of the transom. 12 degrees grew roughly 1/4 inch on this side. 10 degrees roughly a little more than 1/8. So the transom again wider, or taller, by 1/4 inch on the inside versus the out. And we'll call it an 1/8 inch on that side, roughly an 1/8 inch on this side. So overall, you're looking at a 1/4 inch width gain with a 10-degree cut. So that's where we are. So after cutting out the transom, I haven't sanded the edges of the transom or anything. I haven't cut out my framework for the transom. I started cutting and working on my 3/4 inch lamination pieces. So this one isn't sanded yet, still rough cut. This is the floor timber for frame 5.5. This here is the stem. And it turned out super nice. Oh my goodness, it turned out good. And this is the transom knee. I've got it sitting on here just roughly where it's going to be. It also turned out very, very nice. And over here, I've got the breast hook sitting on top. And it turned out really nice as well. Really good fit. Everything just turning out right. On the breast hook, the stem, and the transom knee, I drilled and countersunk because I'm going to come over the top with this and plug these holes just to hide them. Not that anybody will ever see them anyhow, but anyhow, on all three of these pieces, they are drilled, countersunk, and screwed, but I have not epoxied them together. All right, quick update. Here is our stem and breast hook. I took them apart. All of my 3/4 inch lamination line here down the center, that's the epoxy line. Epoxied them and reassembled them. Same with the breast hook. Epoxied and reassembled, and then I epoxy and screwed the breast hook to the stem. And that is incredibly straight. Laying my flat, straight edge from the tip of the stem to the very end of the stem, it's like straight as an arrow. I couldn't believe it. That's